You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Dangerous Liberty Podcast, where we know that safety at the expense of liberty is slavery. I am excited about tonight's show. I'm ready to introduce you to a couple of folks that we have on here, but I think it's a really good opportunity for us to remember what we are as Americans and kind of a warning of where we're headed as America if we stay on a similar trajectory. You know, luckily we did win an election. This last one, I think we're in a better place than we were just a year ago. But I'm excited about that. But real quick, I do want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. I know I saw Lori Matthews over there. We got Bullet and Ballot. I haven't seen you before, Bullet and Ballot. Welcome. Rick Jackson, Moonphase Gazing, Check Your Head. Con over there. Con helping us out as a mod. We got, I'm sure we got Jason and Jeff in there. We got Disney up, Boiler up. Good to see you. We got Melissa Walker from the great state of Texas. I'm from Beaumont, so all my peeps down in Texas. Domsey, good to see you. Lori Matthews, Cindy Shepard, many, many more. If you haven't said hello yet, make sure you do so in just a few minutes. But we're going to have a great show. And just like always, make sure you like, subscribe, all those things that I'm supposed to say. If you do want to support the channel, we have memberships down in the description below. You can go check that out if you want to support the channel in that way. We really appreciate that. Also, we are now offering subscriptions on X. If you're not following me on X, make sure you go follow me on X. And we are also offering subscriptions with that. Just the other day, I did our first members only live stream. We're going to do more of those. I'm going to try to do that at least bi-weekly. And maybe more. We'll see how that goes. But I had a lot of fun, and it's just a good chance to kind of everybody just be real, no pressure, just talk and give you guys an opportunity to ask me questions that maybe wouldn't normally get to. And I really enjoyed that show, and I look forward to doing more of those. As always, we always encourage disagreement. What we're not going to put up with is ad hominem, name-calling nonsense. If you're not going to participate in a constructive way in this conversation, this isn't the channel for you. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome Chris Barber and Tamara Lich. And I'm hitting the wrong buttons, but welcome, y'all. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having us.
There we go. Sure, that's the layout I want. So, yeah, if you guys will, just take a minute real quick and introduce yourselves. Tamara, ladies first. So you just go ahead and...
Chivalry is not dead. Thank you, sir. My name is Tamara Lich. I was one of the co-organizers of the Freedom Convoy that was in Canada in the winter of 2022. And actually, it's funny. I'm so glad we're doing this today. This is actually the anniversary of the first time I ever talked to Chris Barber. A friend sent me a video that he put out about a possible trucker Canada-wide shutdown. Just having them park their trucks for a day. And I was obviously very passionate about what I was seeing happening in my country. Some of us were not permitted to travel on planes, trains, or buses. They were talking about a vax tax in the province of Quebec. They were under a curfew in Quebec. The same stuff was going on down there, and I was tired of it. I was hearing horrible stories of people taking their own lives out of depression, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, the concerns with the rollout of the that was all taking place there. So I really wanted to do something. I just didn't know what to do. And then along came this video with Mr. Barber in it, and I tracked down his phone number, and I gave him a call, and I said, hey, you're going to need help with money. You're going to need money. You're going to need a social media presence, and you're going to need help organizing this. And I said, my skills are logistics, administration, and organization. How can I help you? And 4 years later, after the longest mischief trial in history, 3 years of lawfare, and a couple of stints in jail for myself.
Wow.
Here we are.
Wow. After the show, I'm going to talk to you about if you need a job. We need your skill set down here too.
Oh,
Chris,
fantastic.
if you will, introduce yourself, man. Chris, can you hear
Oh
me?
no, he's frozen.
Did I lose Chris? That's all right.
Yeah.
He was, folks, he was saying that he was
Guys will
having a
have
little
to
bit of
be
cell service
bear
issues.
with
Chris,
me
can you
here.
hear me now?
Seem to be having some technical issues with my. I can hear
That's
you
all
now.
right.
I don't know what's going
Well,
on here. My cell service is dying off here, so you have to tell me if I'm coming through or not.
you're good.
So my name is Chris Barber. I'm the owner and operator of the legendary Canadian truck called Big Red. I led part of the Freedom Convoy in Canada here from the west of Canada to the east to our nation's capital. I co-organized this along with Tamara, Lich, and other people here. It was a time when Canada was locked down under some pretty wild mandates. The mandates continued kept coming. Justin Trudeau introduced the January 15th truckers COVID vaccine passport to cross-border travel, which was going to cripple our industry even harder.
Lost him again.
I get a kick out of this because we can send footage back from the moons of Jupiter, but we can't get cell service across this entire country.
That's how we're. Same thing in West Virginia. I
Wow.
had to go to the freaking Elon satellite dish here because we don't have normal internet here in West Virginia either. So, Chris, you cut out just a little bit there. I don't know if you're good now or if you can hear us.
I'm in a major city center here, and the cell bars are full.
No worries. We'll work through it. Not a big deal. I guess if you will, I guess Tamara,
I'll log off.
Yeah, no worries. Do what you got to do. Tamara, if you will, take us kind of through where this began and obviously going into COVID. You know what? I'll leave it right there. I'll let you tell your story.
Well, going into COVID?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So I was working in the oil and gas industry. I've worked most of my adult life in the oil and gas industry in Alberta. Very proudly, I might add. I think we have one of the most ethical and environmentally friendly oil and gas industries in the entire world. And so it was, my husband and I actually both lost our jobs on the same day we were laid off. And of course, this is what was happening right at the very beginning. And we actually chose to go to the province of Manitoba, where my daughter was, and we spent most of the pandemic out there, basically because we wanted to continue living our life. We didn't want to be in the middle of a city, locked in our home, and so we went to the farm where we could continue to be productive and have a life. And so we stayed there over the course of most of the pandemic, and of course. I did end up finding a job, which was great. I worked for a local municipality, and I was just talking to people and my own family, hearing these terrible stories about, how people, I felt they were suffering or being treated if they were didn't want to wear a mask and our government at that time, our former prime minister was a bit of a psychopath for a lot of us, and it seemed like at the time of the convoy, when we started organizing the convoy, that as the rest of the world started opening up and they were easing the restrictions, our prime minister was doubling down. Like I said, we weren't allowed gatherings. We started arresting pastors for having church services. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the teenager in Calgary, Alberta, who was skating on an outdoor rink by himself, I think maybe, with one other kid that ended up getting tasered. And then the city of Calgary sanded all of the outdoor ice rinks. The playgrounds were police taped off. The kids weren't in school. This did a lot of damage for a lot of people, and not to mention the people that didn't have a choice or felt that they didn't have a choice about getting, so like a lot of people had to keep their job. And even in my case, my employer came to me one day and he said, "So about the vaccine?" And I said, "I'm not doing it." And he said, "Well, that's okay. You can just test a few times a week." And I said, "I'm not doing that either." And so the assistant CAO who was working with him kind of laughed, and she said, "Well, are you going to quit?" And I said, "No, you're going to have to fire me." And so it was, like I said, at that point, I think just hearing the stories of the desperate stories of people, the ridiculousness of what was going on. I mean, I couldn't go into a restaurant. You had to walk into a restaurant with a mask, but as soon as you sat down, you could take it off. I mean, there was nonsense. And of course, 4 years later, I think we all can see through what was going on. It was absolutely the most ridiculous, tyrannical thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it was forced participation in mental illness.
Yes.
You know, that's exactly what it was. And it is crazy looking back. You know, I think there was a lot of us that were like, okay, I'll play the game for a couple weeks. And I will say I was really blessed to be here in West Virginia because we didn't really play that for very long. It was like the 2 weeks and then, you know, 2 weeks lockdown, everybody was home. And then I think maybe another 2 weeks after that. But most people in West Virginia were very rebellious. And you know, it wasn't, I was working in Northern Virginia and I remember I'd go up to Northern Virginia and like go into a restaurant or, you know, a market and people would, and I wouldn't wear a mask, period. And, you know, people would come up and try to police me and I'm like, just get away from me. But it was crazy. I don't know how it was in Canada. You know, the thing that disappointed me the most during the entire COVID ordeal was the willing participation of policing fellow citizens by our citizens. That's what, you know, we had people that were turning people in, calling numbers, like, and then they felt empowered now that they could come up to you and tell you that you need to put a mask on.
I call it the pandemic of the Karens.
It is
really
exactly
what it was.
that.
More importantly, I think the amount of people that died in care homes and hospitals
Yes.
while loved ones watched their loved ones take their last dying breaths on an iPad or you know, a cell phone.
Died of neglect. The long-term care homes in Quebec where the senior citizens were neglected. They died in their beds, in their own feces and urine, starving, unmedicated, and dying of thirst. It was, I mean, this, like, we lost our humanity.
We did. What were you saying, Chris?
Well, you know, previous to traveling in the North America like I've done for the last 20 some years, I would cross the border in a commercial vehicle into North Dakota and I would have freedom. I would in North Dakota, South Dakota, as I traveled throughout the US, no masks, no COVID vaccine passports, that sort of stuff. And then when I came back to Canada, I had to use an app on my phone along with my passport called the ArriveCan app. So Canadian customs officers could see what my vaccination status was. That was something. And then crossing back into Canada, we had, you know, your Vax Pass. It seemed like the regulations kept coming. They weren't letting us off with anything. In fact, they were talking about, you know, interprovincial checkpoints up here in between the provinces in Canada, where officials would be guarding that. It actually was taking place in some Far East provinces. It didn't seem like they were going to relinquish any of our freedoms back to us at any time soon, and they pushed Canadian citizens to the point where we finally stood up. But when we stood up, they have made their life's mission to make our lives hell ever since, and that's been 4 years now that we've been going through this ordeal fighting the government.
So how did I mean, it's a little self-explanatory, but tell me a little bit how the truckers got involved in this and how you guys started organizing and, you know, pushing back on the government from, you know, the trucking industry standpoint.
See, I did a TikTok video on January 7th, 2022, and you know, in North Dakota, where I had supper and had an easy freedom-filled night. I was irritated with the mandates that were approaching with the cross-border travel for commercial vehicles. We were going to have to be, you know, fully vaxxed in order to be able to cross the border anymore as a commercial vehicle. And we've been doing that for the previous number of years safely. We live in the cab of our truck. I'm in my truck right now. So I did the TikTok video on January 7th, and it went a little viral. A lot of people, paid attention to it. A lot of people were feeling the same way as me. And then as we branched off from there, we found a whole group of people in different movements across the country that were working for the same goal, and it was kind of uniting all those different groups and then having a conversation as to what we were going to do. At first, it was rolling, slow rolling our local legislative grounds in Canada here in our individual provinces. And then it merged into this big thing with other people that we were going to go to where our leaders are holding office in Ottawa and have them held accountable. So, or at least to have that conversation with them.
So at that point, you guys decided to meet at the Capitol and kind of occupy Ottawa in some ways and protest. So
in some ways,
yep, go ahead.
It wasn't necessarily our plan to occupy the city. Our plan was to go there to have a conversation with our government. And as soon as we started gaining momentum and people were listening to us, the government started laying out a whole line of different things that they were going to try and use against us, using legacy media in this country to turn people against us, to create a false narrative, to tell us that everyone in Canada, that we were dangerous, threatening.
You were racist. I remember Trudeau saying that.
Yeah,
you were white supremacists.
And then it was a campaign after that. Trudeau basically ran like a little baby as soon as the truck showed up in Ottawa. He was a no-go. He was a coward. Before actually, yeah.
He fled the city before we got there.
It was, and then we found out afterwards that the government's messaging was to do that, was to destroy us via the media and turn people against us, and it became kind of a stalemate after that. It was we demanded that we had that conversation with our sitting government, and they refused to do so at every avenue, even though we offered multiple times, multiple different ways to have that conversation. They refused, so we became a stalemate, and we were working with law enforcement the entire time across this country. We had, good cooperation from our local members all the way. And then it was just basically the government messaging that got us into the position. And it was a stalemate to who was going to give out first. And Tamara and I listened to the stories from countless thousands of Canadians as we crossed Canada. They wanted answers. They wanted relief. They wanted our government to quit with the mandates. And so we went to Ottawa with that on our shoulders, knowing that this is our do or die. If we didn't stand up to this, the government of Canada was going to be forcing, mandatory vaxes on its citizens every 6 months, I believe. That was something that was coming down the kettle, and that was something that we weren't prepared to stand for.
So they were going to force you to get a booster essentially every 6 months. Was that the deal?
Yes.
Well, they kept moving the goalposts, right? First, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Then it was just a little bit longer. And then it was the vaccines are coming. And then it was one vaccine. And then it was two. And then it was, the goalposts kept moving. Anyways, yeah, it was quite something to behold. And then, of course, it started, like you said, in typical fashion. At first, they mocked us and made fun of us. Like somebody, I think Jag Meat Singh, the former leader of the NDP here, which is our socialist federal party, called us fascists and joked that he thought 12 trucks were going to show up. And then of course, after they saw the momentum we were getting, then it turned into name calling, and then it got worse from there. And like Chris alluded to, we found out during the Public Order Emergency Commission in the fall of 2022 that the Prime Minister's office and the Office of Public Safety were colluding with the mainstream media to paint a narrative of the January 6th insurrection before I even shook Chris Barber's hand and met him in person for the first time.
Now, did you guys have politicians? And I'll be honest with you, I don't keep tabs on Canadian politics. Did you guys have politicians that were fighting for you? What did that look like?
We kind of did. The government messaging to people in cabinet was that we were these evil people. So even people in our own, we call them conservatives up here, basically our Republican Party,
sure.
They were messaged to us, to them right away, to be careful and be mindful of these people. They're racist, they're white supremacists, they're misogynists. And so that narrative was painted right away. And a lot of people in Parliament were, the politician style came out right away. Do we associate ourselves with these people or not knowing the real story on it? Now that, they see it for what it was and they understand what happened and what took place. But that was the only hesitation, was the government messaging. It went deep.
Yeah. At the peak of that protest, how many people would you say were actually down there at Ottawa?
Oof.
500,000,
Oh wow.
if not more.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It really ramped up on weekends, so a lot of people
Yes.
would go. We would come back on a Thursday, and man, we had talk of like NHL hockey players coming on the third weekend, I believe it was, to
Yes,
play
right.
street hockey with the kids. We had a little area on our nation's capital, Wellington Street, where we had a street hockey. We had bouncy castles. We had people that makeshift hot tubs, for crying out loud, and it was just a people were living again. It was the most
They were
patriotic and
cooking
amazing.
food.
Yes.
They were cooking food on the street and serving people and feeding the homeless. And you would walk down Wellington and there'd be tables set up with toques and mitts and scarves and, anything that you needed. And crime went down. The homeless were fed. There wasn't a single overdose death in downtown Ottawa the entire time that we were there. And if you saw downtown Ottawa, you would understand how quite shocking that statistic alone is. And it was, people were so happy. And it should have been, according to what the media was telling us and the politicians and our health experts, a massive super spreader event, and we should all be dead. Because strangers were crying on each other and hugging each other, and like it was quite something to see this country come together in such a fashion.
Yeah, and I remember seeing even from our, mainstream media, some different footage from all that. And of course, they weren't on your side either, everything from CNN to MSNBC. And immediately they were playing different videos from, from Justin Trudeau and other politicians calling you racist and white supremacists. And that's what this is really all about. And I knew immediately, like, oh, this is utter horse shit. But what I will say is they never showed any pictures that indicated 500,000 people down there. Like I saw the pictures I saw looked like maybe 10,000 people. So again, it just goes to show you what propaganda media on every border is, they're showing you what they want you to see and don't let you know what's really going on out there. But that's pretty crazy. So you guys are doing this protest. And then I know at some point the government of Canada really started cracking down on you guys. And I know there was like a Give, Send, Go fund to help support this and to help support the people that were protesting. Talk about that a little bit.
Oof, I'd love to. On January the 14th, I started a GoFundMe to help raise money for these guys because I wasn't planning on going.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally thought when I made that 4 years ago tomorrow morning that, I thought maybe they'll raise like $20,000 and Chris and some truckers can drive there and hold up a little sign and then get back in their trucks and come home. I mean, we had no idea what was coming. And I think we blew past, I asked Chris, how much should I set the amount for, the total for? And he said 200,000. And I laughed. I said, as if we're never going to hit that. I said, I'll set it for 100. And I feel weird about that even. And we blew past that in 24 hours, I think it was. So, and right off the bat, it became, I didn't know about GoFundMe. I didn't know about politics behind that organization when I signed up. I just knew it was a crowdfunding thing. And so immediately they sort of felt to me like they were dragging their feet a little bit. And as the donations kept coming in, now let me tell you, as we were traveling across Ottawa, the Canadians were donating $1 million per day.
Wow.
Per day. And so I would get an email from, so I organized a finance committee. I put together a finance committee to protect the truckers, to protect the donors, and to protect myself. Because I immediately, when you start talking about millions of dollars, the lawyers are coming. And so I put all that stuff in place. And I would get an email from GoFundMe to confirm what our plans were. It was set up for food, fuel, and lodgings for the truckers. And so they'd send me an email with 3 questions. I'd answer it. They'd send an email back with 5 more questions. I'd answer those, and I'd get an email back. And this went on and on and on and on. And they were dragging their feet and dragging their feet. So long story short, we flew. The lawyers came in on February the 3rd. And we had a meeting with GoFundMe the very next night because it was becoming very obvious that there was shenanigans happening. And on that Thursday night, we had all of our legal counsel present and the organizers, and they GoFundMe agreed to release the money. And the next morning we woke up and they had frozen our campaign because the city of Ottawa and the law enforcement here contacted them and told them that they were funding domestic terrorists. So, but they had released $1 million first into that account, or into the account, which was actually my empty savings account that I had. That was overdrawn 13 cents. So I made sure before I started it that I put 13 cents in because I didn't want to be accused of stealing 13 cents even, you know.
Sure.
And so they did release that the million that was immediately seized. And but in the meantime, we'd already started working with a fantastic organization called Give, Send, Go. I highly recommend Jacob Wells's organization, very highly credible, tons of integrity, and just very user friendly. And so we had thankfully already started that next protest. But what GoFundMe and the government did by shutting down that campaign was we went from raising $10 million to GoFundMe to, it was like 13 or 14, I think, wasn't it, Chris?
12, yeah. 12,
because it was 12, yeah.
$12 million.
A lot of people that had
US.
donated already
Wow.
were upset, and so they donated twice as much. And some people that didn't donate the first time were even more upset about that, and so they made donations too. And so that money also ended up getting seized, except for just over 3 million of our donations. There's Bitcoin donations from another fundraiser and ours that were all seized. Ours was just over $3 million. It got seized coming through the Stripe processing payment processor. And the rest of it got returned. And the great thing about it was with GoFundMe, when they canceled the campaign, they said they would refund the money to anyone that requested it, and the rest of it they were going to keep and donate to a charity of their choice until Governor Ron DeSantis, God bless that man, I hope to shake his hand one day, stood up and said, no, you won't, because that's fraud. And so suddenly everyone got a refund.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So now I had also heard at some point, I think it was Give, Send, Go that was like hacked, something along those lines. Is that correct?
Was. Yeah, a young hacker out of Ontario, Canada, hacked the Give, Send, Go account, got a list of names of everyone who donated, and then released that into the social media streams, and then proceeded to dox average day Canadians who were tired of the government mandates. I believe he's since been arrested now, and the U.S. is actually seeking him right now, extradition.
Texas.
Yeah, which is good.
For hacking into something in Texas, I can't remember what it was.
It's pretty crazy when you have these hackers that are supporting the government. Really what this is, again, this plays into everything that we're seeing. And I think most people would agree that, COVID was a dry run, right? It was a practice run to see just how much they could control and push the average citizen out there. And again, looking back, it's crazy to me how many people complied, how many people enjoyed it, supported it, and wanted all the government control that they could possibly get. Whether it's, putting something into your body that's an experimental drug, forcing all these ridiculous things from, wearing these masks, like you said, walking into a restaurant, then you have to wear the mask, but then you can sit down, and now the virus is, no longer a problem.
Following the arrows in the grocery store, that was probably my favorite.
Yeah. The magic arrows.
I hope people look back on this point in history and just make fun of us like they should. Mm-hmm. I mean, it should just be one big meme. Like, look how stupid these people were in the 2020s. Look how dumb they were. It's almost like looking at people back in the 1920s that were using, radiated toothpaste. It's about as dumb as that. And at least there was a lot more science that we knew going into 2020 as opposed to 1920. But, how much support they had. And this is clearly, in my opinion, a communist globalist agenda that we continue to see being pushed all through the United States, as well as Canada and really everywhere else. That's That's ultimately what we're dealing with. So first they seize your money and they label you guys domestic terrorists. What happens next?
Well, I was the first one arrested. February 17th, I was approached by officers from behind. They seized my cell phone and they placed me into custody. Tamara was shortly after, and then others in the organizations, I guess. The scary part, what they did was they processed us, charged us with mischief, mass mischief. One of the things Crown prosecutors did in Ontario is they seized my cell phone. They hacked into that cell phone, downloaded 4,200 pages of cell phone evidence, including conversations with my lawyer, my family, my children, it was everything. And they proceeded to try and use that against me. But before, it's all about embarrassment, right? They released it to the media, all 4,200 pages of that cell phone evidence. It was a Thursday. We had a long weekend, so the Friday was the holiday. They released it on the Thursday, and we couldn't get in until the Monday to put a sealing order on that through the courts. So the legacy media actually had access to everything in my cell phone, text messages, personal information, whatever it may be, photos. Of course, they didn't have anything. The highlight of their evidence, what the Crown prosecutor quoted as what was the quote that he gave Tamara? It was the crown jewel of evidence against Chris and Tamara. It was a text message from Tamara to myself saying, there's people that want to gridlock the city. Can you meet at the hotel and we'll discuss this? The city was already gridlocked at that point, but that was their claim to fame, and that's what they were going to use to try and really stick it to it, which is quite lawfare, is what the government is really good at in this country. They've, Tamara and I were found guilty of mischief. Obviously, I was found guilty of disobeying a court order because I stated to the protesters in Ottawa, we had a horn injunction in place and we weren't supposed to honk a horn. But if you see a vast majority of law enforcement moving down the street to, kettle you, lay on the horn and let everybody know that was, it was happening, that law enforcement was going to break up the most peaceful protest in Canadian history. Yeah, there I am right there getting thrown in the police car.
You do look mischievous right there.
And my 18-year-old son was watching that. My 18-year-old son was with me when they nabbed me there. So there's an infamous smile that I give across the hood of that car there, and that was to try and calm my 18-year-old son down. I've looked across the car and seen basically tears welling up in his eyes. He was scared and didn't know what to do, just to reassure him that everything was going to be okay.
Well, Chris, if nothing else, man, I think what you did as far as setting an example about principles for your son, I think is one of the most invaluable. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to talk tough or willing to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to oppose the government. I'm going to stand up. But when the rubber meets the road and it's really come time for action and or risk, right?
Yes.
That's where they often fall apart. And man, I just can't commend your courage enough. You're a great example for every man out there and woman, but and for us Americans as well. Like we should have seen a lot more of this all throughout COVID, and too many people just backed down, unfortunately. And again, I can't commend both of you enough, and everybody else that participated in that, and ultimately, especially those that went to jail. How many people ended up going to jail?
Myself. I was arrested shortly after. Well, basically, I spent the day with a veteran walking around. We went up to the vet. We had a service every day for our vets at the War Memorial, and I spent the rest of the day walking around with my husband and one of the road captains and a veteran, and just talking to people. And we got back to the hotel, and everyone's phone started going off, and we knew that we found out Chris had been arrested. And so myself and Danny Bulford, who is a former RCMP, he was a sniper for Justin Trudeau's security detail, as a matter of fact. And he quit his job over the mandates. We made a decision to go out and turn ourselves in. We didn't want the police coming to the hotel and arresting us in front of our spouses. I think that would be incredibly traumatic for them, and we did not want anything to happen to the owner of the hotel that we stayed at. Was about to lose her business. She was 2 weeks from bankruptcy when we showed up. Wow. And she was the sweetest lady, and I just didn't want that anything for her. You know how people are. And so we decided to go out and turn ourselves in. And in my case, we did go turn ourselves in. The police that we talked to said no, they weren't looking for us. And I said, okay, well, if that changes, we're just going to be right up there. And I pointed up towards the hill. And basically, what they did was they waited until I was in a dark place with no lights. We were going to head back to the hotel about an hour and a half later. And as we're walking down the dark street, a couple comes towards me, and this lady recognized me, and she cried and hugged me, and she's thanking me. And all of a sudden, a police Suburban goes flying down the street, and then another one, and then another one, and then the other one came over, and he pulled up, and then you saw what happened there. So Chris got lucky. I don't think the judge knew who she had when he went and had his bail hearing. He was sent home. He was on the road the next day, heading back for home. I was in remand for the weekend, and it was a long weekend, and by Tuesday morning, the judge said my city 12 times, and said I was a danger to society, and that releasing me would put the administration of justice into disrepute, and she denied me bail, which does not happen in a mischief case. A mischief case in Canada would be like a misdemeanor, spray painting a public fence, right? And we weren't even charged with mischief at first. Our first charge was counseling others to commit the offense of mischief, which did not occur, which still to this day I can't even wrap my head around that charge. And then they added the rest of the charges later. So there was myself that was imprisoned. Pat King spent 5 months in jail in a remand center. He was denied bail repeatedly. And then, of course, we weren't affiliated or had anything to do with the protest at Coutts, but there's still a guy, one of the Coutts boys is still in jail. And Coutts was the protest that took place in Coutts, Alberta at the border crossing. And so there was 4 of them originally that were thrown in jail, and I think they were all in there for 2 years before they finally, 2 of them, one pled and got out, or did they both, Chris? I can't quite remember, but there's still, Tony Oleanic is still in jail. He has not had a bail hearing. He hasn't had a trial.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's what, 3.5 years?
Just about 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was pretty apparent that this was a witch hunt. Every single acquittal, not that there's been many in these cases, is being appealed and overturned. And I think I only know of one, and that's Bern Buchert from Fort St. John. I don't know if you ever saw the truck that had the big Mandate Freedom sign on the back of it. That was Bern's truck. And
Gotcha.
he was acquitted, and his was not appealed. But as far as I know, all the acquittals are getting appealed, and they're actually getting overturned.
They're actually appealing our sentence right now. Most people know we were found guilty of mischief and disobeying a court order. Our trial was 60 days in court in the city of Ottawa. We traveled 8 different trips from the west of Canada to the east to our nation's capital to attend this trial. We're now currently sitting on 12 months house arrest. I'm able to work. So is Tamara. So I'm actually able to be out in the truck here hauling equipment for my customers. And then after that 12 months of house arrest is done, we're sentenced to 6 months of curfew, as well as 100 hours community service after that. So it's been a long road. When we were found guilty of mischief, of course, the Crown introduced the motion to have my truck, my livelihood, Big Red, a truck that I've owned since new in 2003, and the truck that I led the convoy with, they wanted to forfeit the truck and destroy the truck because of the significance it holds to the Freedom Convoy and embarrassing the government. So we just actually finished that round of court. That was a lengthy court process as well. The 19th of December, the judge ruled against the Crown in forfeiting the truck. So very thankful for that, but also embarrassed that we have to this is a conversation we have to have in Canada.
So since then, I know we talked about, during the protests and everything else, we didn't have, you guys didn't have a lot of politicians or anybody standing up for you. Like, where are they now? Like, what's happening to the Conservative Party there in Canada? Do you have, politicians out there fighting on your behalf? Like, also like lawyers? Like, did you guys have lawyers? How did that go?
Lawyers. I never thought I'd have so many lawyers in my life, I got to tell you. But I'm very lucky because they're the creme de la creme, let me tell you. I lost my train of thought here. Go ahead, Chris. You can answer
We
that because
we do have the Conservative Party of Canada has since then
yeah.
woke up to what's going on and how the government messaged to people against us, and they've come to our side. In Canada here, our politicians are not allowed to interfere with law. So that's a big no-no. They can be held accountable for that, but they can give an opinion on it. And the majority of our conservative leader up here, Pierre Poilievre, has actually commented on Tamara and I's case and supported us now, as well as gaining recognition from a few other of our sitting MPs. So
A few.
the tides
I
are
mean,
turning.
they are. I mean, Pierre Poilievre, I like him, but he came out when it was safe to do so. He
Yeah.
came out when the sentencing request from the Crown was so ridiculous that he had to say something. And I mean, we get a lot of support from these people privately, but they won't say anything publicly. And I want to share with you a message that I got from a former Crown prosecutor from Toronto. She's now a criminal defense lawyer. She sent me a DM about 6 weeks ago, maybe less. And she said she spent 15 years as a Crown prosecutor for the Attorney General's Office of Ontario. And she said she's appalled at what she's seeing. And she said every single lawyer that she's spoken with thinks that's what is happening here in this case is unprecedented and stupid, and quite frankly, a little unsettling. And every single one, not most of them, not half of them. She said every single one. And I'm thinking to myself, that's great. Like, I mean, the silent support is nice. But if you're talking about lawyers, if all of those lawyers stood up and said, this is wrong, then this wouldn't be a problem. Instead, but they have mansions and they have boats and they have Lexus and these fancy, they have all this stuff to lose. And so then it gets left to people like myself, Chris, the road captains, and regular everyday Canadian citizens, when all these people in positions of influence, just like law enforcement. I mean, Chris and I are constantly told by law enforcement, present and former, that the majority of law enforcement in Canada stands with us and doesn't agree with what's happening and supports what we do. But again, I mean, they have too much to lose.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for sure.
Ukraine's the ambassador on the screen there, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
She took a position with the Ukraine government to help launder money overseas, I guess. It's an embarrassment. This country is becoming so socialist, and so the corruption right now in government is unrecognizable anymore. It's every single day, and there's no accountability from any elected officials for breaking the rules or using the law. We're in trouble up here right now. We need some sort of reform, and we need people to wake up.
Now, in Canada, do you guys have anything that's equivalent to, I feel like I know the answer to this, but do you have anything that's equivalent to the First Amendment there in Canada?
We do not. No, we don't. In fact, the government of Canada has since banned all restricted. They classify our rifles, our firearms as restricted, prohibited, and non-restricted. So we're allowed to have hunting rifles now. All classes of anything assault rifle have now been officially banned in Canada, as well as handguns.
Assault style, they call
If
them,
you-
because they look scary.
A semi-automatic.
Scary guns.
A 1022 Ruger shell, your 25 shot clips for a 1022 Ruger is actually illegal in Canada right now. You cannot buy them. You cannot possess them. Apparently, according to the government, there's a pistol out there that will hold the clip for that 1022 Ruger. Our gun controls we're approaching Britain and Australia right now when it comes to what we use. If you have a prohibited, you can possess handguns until you pass away. You're not allowed to pass them on. So Canadians in this country right now if there's a death in the family, and then RCMP will literally show up to your house and confiscate those weapons of that person that died if they're not allowed to transfer them down. So they're eliminating our right to protect ourselves daily up here. And it's like I equated to a dog chain to a tree, and the government keeps removing a link of that chain every day, and people don't realize that they're losing more and more of their freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. People need to understand what's going on. And this is a common thing anytime. Now, what I was asking was the First Amendment in that freedom of speech. I didn't know if you.
Oh, sorry. Second
no
Amendment.
worries. Second Amendment. No worries.
Yep.
That was my next question too. Again,
Well, just
I am pretty well versed on Canadian gun laws. We actually sell a lot of guns and gear, not guns, but we sell a lot of gear to Canada. Not so much, but even like anything that's related to a firearm is so heavily restricted. Optics, even like scope mounts and things like that. It's so restrictive that it's crazy. And again, I was down earlier this year in Quebec visiting Cadix Defense and just talking to them and hearing the hoops that they have to jump through as a firearms manufacturer, and they mainly manufacture bolt action weapons, long range precision rifles. But still, I mean, it's just so restrictive. I don't know how that anybody. I couldn't deal with that. I think I'd be moving south. So, what do you guys think is the answer for this? Like, do you see? Even down here in the United States, like we haven't seen any sort of politicians be held accountable for any of this, anything that we went through COVID. And it's funny to watch them backtrack the way that they have, and so many, and even like deny that they were so restrictive. Newsom is a great example of that. Like, yeah, what's the answer for Canada specifically?
A psychiatrist. But I don't know. I'm seeing what's happening here, and honestly, I thought you guys had it so much better off in the States, but after seeing what's going on down there in Minnesota, and some of these crazy leftists, like I think you guys are actually literally fighting the same battle as we are up here. Especially with your media. I don't know if any of your mainstream media is funded by the government down there, but I mean, our mainstream media in Canada takes subsidies from taxpayers. And so we can't expect them to be held accountable. And that's a problem. Going back to your question about the First Amendment and free speech, like we have very few media outlets that actually pursue real journalism. That aren't just publishing propaganda, because every single one that is taking money is publishing propaganda. So I think from my perspective, I think people just have to get involved in some way, like whether it's on a school board or a local community council, or politics at any level, or just find something that you're passionate about and get involved in and do something and start conversations. I mean, I think one of the things I feel, like I said earlier, is we lost our humanity during COVID. And I think there was a time, at least in Canada, where it didn't matter if you had differences. You strive to find common ground with someone, and you built a relationship off of common ground. You didn't immediately cancel, smear, and send them death threats or whatever because you didn't like something about them. And I think we just need to find our patience, and we need to get back to our humanity, and we need to just start talking to people again.
And
Everyone's
the conversation's gone.
warrior.
There's no conversation anymore. There was a time when the left and the right could have a civil conversation and agree to disagree, but for some reason that's been taken away from us. And I think it started, especially under the liberal regime in Canada in the last 10 years. They found ways to divide us in the past, our skin color, or, where we live in the country. It's always been a battle between East and West Canada. Convoy, that was one of the biggest things that we disproven, was that people from Quebec actually hugging somebody from Alberta, two provinces that allegedly hated each other. And here they are standing on a street corner in Ottawa, hugging each other and crying and having a conversation. The government then divided us in our households. Christmas season was just here. How many families out there didn't have Christmas supper with their family ones because of something that the government did to divide us in through the scandemic time?
Yeah. So do you, either one of you, foresee any recourse that you guys are going to be able to take to get your convictions overturned, anything like that? Or is that just kind of water in the bridge? You're just going to have to,
Well, I'm appealing my conviction. I am appealing my conviction. I pled not guilty. If you ever saw any of my videos, I constantly was on there advocating for peace. We all were. cooperating with law enforcement, being respectful to the citizens of Ottawa. This was the constant rhetoric. And, Chris said something, they made up a word. I don't know about the United States, but in Canada, our officials like to make words up. And so basically what we were found guilty of was what they call, they called it a mass mischief. So while there's absolutely zero evidence that either one of us committed the crime of mischief in any way, shape, or form, they called it a mass mischief in a prior case and found somebody else guilty for basically aiding and abetting this mass mischief. And so he was found guilty. And so because all of these cases got to court before ours, there's a precedent set. And we've got some serious problems with our legal system. We don't have a judicial system in Canada because there's no justice. We have a legal system, and it's a completely different thing. And so, there's absolutely zero evidence that Chris or I committed any crimes. We were constantly advocating for peace. We were in constant communications with police. We signed a deal with the city of Ottawa the night before, or a few days before the invocation of the Emergencies Act. We signed an agreement so that we were going to move some trucks because we didn't ever want to bother the residents like that. The police led us up to the hill and showed us where to park and gave us maps. And there were so many trucks that came in too that, it just got full. And Chris and the road captains were out there every day. And that's one thing I wanted to correct that Chris said earlier about the gridlock of the city. Because Chris and those guys were out there every single day, making sure that there was always an emergency lane open. Constantly. And the importance of making sure that happened. One of our road captains, our Army Tom, we call him, he had a son that was, he's quite sick and he has to take an ambulance often. So we understood the importance of that. So what happened was, as Chris and the road captains would clear a lane, the city or the cops would come in and drop a jersey barrier or bring in a piece of heavy equipment and block it. So if you look at a lot of the footage from the convoy at some of the intersections, it's police cars, jersey barriers, and excavators that are blocking the road, not the trucks.
Yeah, well, this looks like a very similar pattern. Everything you're describing to me sounds just like January 6th here in the United States.
The bricks too.
Where you're looking at being completely set up, and you're demonized and you're playing by the rules, but the government isn't. It's not just the government. Again, it's the left. I think that's a fair way to describe this, because these are leftist tactics that have been used time and time again. Every time that we've had the communist takeover, everything you described is just the formula that they use. First, you got to divide people based on race, creed, religion, color. And then once you do that, then you got to demonize the other side. And that's what they've done here in the United States. They continue to do it. And that was the formula that they used, sounds like, even during the truck protest. And it's disappointing. Again, you expect some of these things from the government, but it's disappointing to see how many of the citizens back these things. That's what always kind of shocks me a little bit. Whether you're here in the United States or Canada, like, we value our rights. And that's always going back to what you said earlier, Chris. Like, I remember where you could have those conversations where it's like, you know what, I disagree with you, but I would fight and die for your right to have that opinion. And that's not even in the conversation anymore. It's like, no, you don't deserve to have that opinion. You shouldn't have that opinion, and you're evil because you do have that opinion.
Or you should die because you have that opinion.
Yeah, no,
right?
or be jailed because you have that opinion. Or how dare you stand up for your individual liberty and your individual rights and autonomy over your body, not to put a vaccine that hasn't been tested. And that's the other crazy thing now. Like, everything that we talked about during COVID, where it's like, hey, we know people are have vaccine injuries, and yet they're like, no, that's not true. That's nothing but a conspiracy theory or whatever else. And now we see that here in the United States, I don't know what they're doing in Canada, but now they're putting a black box label for kids for the vaccine. And yet they still are telling people to go get their booster shots. They're still pushing this. And it is like, again, you're asking me to participate in insanity, and I'm just not going to do it. And yeah, I don't know. It's disappointing to hear that Canada has gone that far, and of course, like you said, we're not that far behind you here in the United States, especially in many of the urban cities. So
I was looking at some of the footage of some of these lefty ladies being arrested today, and I was kind of laughing to myself, you know, because you see my video and Chris's arrest video, and I'm thinking, I just about put a post out like, we could probably go teach these ladies a thing or two about getting arrested with grace and dignity. You
they
know, like
have
it's
none.
embarrassing. It's crazy. They're crazy.
Yeah, no, and that's the other thing too. I get so frustrated and pissed off at the false equivalency, right? It's like, oh, look, you did the same thing. Like it is so different anytime that you have a right versus left. On the left, and I feel, I guess, a little guilty making this about right versus left, but it is. I mean, that's what it is. That's what we're dealing with. And you have the protests. When you have these leftist protests, they're always violent. They're always destroying things. They're always burning down properties. I don't know how it is in Canada, but it's definitely here in the United States. I mean, we saw the Summer of Love and the George Floyd riots and all of that. And as this person is standing in front of, a house burning behind them, it's, they're trying to say that it's mostly peaceful.
I
And
saw that.
it is,
Wow. Yeah.
it's just bonkers.
We've
Like,
had
have you guys,
our Antifa up here, of the Palestinian protesters, have been caught on camera chanting "Death to Canada, death to China, Prime Minister Trudeau, death to the United States, death to Israel." Smoke can, when Christian singer Sean Foyt's was in Canada for his tour, they were throwing smoke bombs into Christian, or was it? It was actually a mosque.
Church. It
It was a church.
Yeah.
And no charges, no one arrested. It was kind of like, just don't do that again, and they walk along with the way. But yet, Freedom Convoy was nothing like that. It was completely peaceful. There was no violence. Even when police were beating the living shit out of innocent protesters on our nation's capital, we remained vigilant. We remained peaceful, and we took the blows. Many people were badly injured by law enforcement. Tear gas canisters shot in people's faces, rubber bullets. We were standing there with Canadian flags, and we were proud to stand there.
Mm-hmm.
have you guys thought about running for office there in Canada? I mean, like, what do you think that it's salvageable? Like, what's your assessment on Canada specifically?
What we're seeing right now in Canada is a divide right now. We've got the Western provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan mainly, who are talking about independence. And I know the government makes the posters out there that, becoming the 51st state. That's not part of the equation. We have the resources. We have everything that we need in the Western provinces, and we could successfully leave the Confederation of Canada and go it on our own. Our biggest trade partner would probably be the United States of America, and we would work hand in hand with the U.S. Because Canada's a lost avenue right now. So this independence movement right now in the West is forming, building a lot of steam. People in Canada see that their future isn't there anymore. People in the West, when we have an election, our vote is already counted before, we even get to our time zone. The East decides everything in Canada with how they vote, and the East primarily is a lot of the liberal voters. So. This is a problem in this country right now. So that's the avenue we're approaching right now in the West. Independence. We want off the sinking ship that Ottawa has created.
Yeah, I always feel like Canada is kind of the canary in the coal mine for the United States. I feel like when it comes to these leftist policies, you all are kind of like 5, maybe 10 years, maybe not even that, ahead of us. And I thought it was so important to have you guys on to just talk about this and make people aware of this as much as we can and understand that it's so important to push back on these things because we are in a fight for our countries.
Yeah.
And we clearly have these politicians that are allowing our countries to be overran with illegal immigration. I don't know what you guys have up there,
It's
but
bad.
immigration.
It's bad.
Even when I was up there, we went up through Niagara Falls and then on up to Quebec, and like it's primarily immigrants.
The hotels in Niagara Falls are all full of immigrants.
Yeah,
immigrants. And I just want to tell you a quick story. This is the situation. We have a massive mass migration problem, but legally speaking, so you heard a bit about our story, you understand what we've gone through. I was arrested a second time on a breach and jailed for a month in the summer of 2022, denied bail again on that occasion, and ended up spending a month in jail. And recently, I mean, there's so many cases in Canada to compare it to that it's disgusting. But the one I'm going to bring up to you is that recently in Canada, a non-citizen was found guilty he was charged with trying to procure sex from an underage Canadian girl. And they dropped his charges. No, they gave him an absolute discharge because they didn't want it to affect his immigration status. We have citizens in Canada right now, or non-citizens in Canada, that are committing crimes that are just getting let go because they don't want it to hurt their paperwork. And in the meantime, and we're talking like sexual offenders,
Right.
violent offenders.
Violent offenders, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we have the same issue here in the United States, and it's clearly along voting parties. Like, if you are a conservative and you get caught doing something mildly wrong, you're like, we saw like all the things that you guys are going through. We saw with January 6th, people that didn't even step into the Capitol, people that were a block away, ended up getting traced down by the FBI, thrown in jail without bail, without lawyers, in solitary confinement for months and months and months. And it is a huge travesty of justice, or a lack thereof. And I don't know. I feel like that there is, people are waking up here in the United States, or at least I did until recently. It feels like we're already swinging in the other direction, and that's really unfortunate, because all it took was a year being away from Biden and forgetting how terrible that economy was, how lawfare was, all the politics involved. And then now we have Trump. We've had a really good year. We've closed the border. There's lots of things to look at as far as what he's been able to do in a positive way. But the media has done such a good job demonizing everything that Trump has done, to where we even have conservatives like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to vote in the midterms. It's like, what is wrong with you people? Like, is your memory so short that you can't remember that we were having tens of thousands of immigrants flood and invade our country every single day? And you don't think, like, I've said it 1,000 times, if Trump did nothing for this entire 4-year term, if he just closed off the border, it's a freaking win. We had multiple administrations go through there. We had dozens of years where we had a completely open border. Nothing was being done. There was no deportations, no matter if they were violent, no matter if they killed people. Didn't matter. Sexual assault, other assaults. We had Americans dying left and right because of illegal immigrants, and they were let off, or they got a slap on the wrist, and like, back into the public you go, back on welfare, back on getting your housing and everything paid for by us, the U.S. tax dollars, the people that have generations of family here that have bled and died for this country. And yet we're the ones being prosecuted and persecuted, while, they get to reap the benefits of our blood, sweat, and tears. And I don't know. I hope people are waking up to what's going on.
The entire election campaign from the election that we just had in Canada was basically about your president.
Yes.
It was the Liberal Party of Canada completely vilified him and kept accusing the other side of being MAGA. Like, MAGA in Canada, they try to, it's all Donald Trump fear mongering. It's just absolutely stunning. Like, why don't you pay attention to what is happening in your own country? But that was the basis of the entire campaign. It was rage bait, fear mongering about President Trump.
I have my thoughts on this, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. And I think, there's very little difference between the U.S. and Canada when it comes to this. We have politicians that are not doing things that benefit their citizens, that are basically selling their citizens out and setting their country up. Like, you don't have to be an economist. You don't have to be some brilliant scholar to look at the trajectory of a country and see, like, hey, you know what? We're in a downward spiral that I'm not sure that we can even pull out of. Why do you think that is? Like, what is the motivation behind all of this?
Greed, power.
Canada, it's a socialist agenda. You need to wonder, the World Economic Forum, we've had that Klaus Schwab before say that he's, interfered in Canadian politics. He's infiltrated our politicians. You know, it's a reality, and Canada is so far down that hole right now. We've been, as Canadian citizens, we've been conditioned to follow the narrative that the government sets in front of us, and don't question that else, or we will, run you to the ends of the earth in audits and lawfare and so on. We've lived it for the last 4 years, and we're seeing it firsthand. Most people's eyes could be open so easily if they just, open the eyelids. But it's too hard to do that. Canadians are, we're pretty complacent, and it's sad, honestly sad.
And I think a lot of it has to do with funneling. Like to me, I feel like Western politics has literally just become, getting somebody in place that has access to the taxpayer wallet to do with whatever they want. I mean, in Canada, we have a homeless problem, a serious drug problem. We've got families that are, living in their cars. There's so many problems here. The MAID in itself, you've probably heard of our MAID program. Like, people that can't afford to live are trying to access our MAID program, which is basically medical murder, in my opinion. And it's like all they're coming for now is for that wallet to send it out of the country. Like, we are broke. We are over $1 trillion in debt in Canada. And 2 weeks ago, just before Christmas, our prime minister once again gave another $2.5 billion to the Ukraine. How many vaccine injured people could that help, that actually need some help, because that program's a joke? Our senior citizens, that can't even support themselves on their pensions. Like, there's Canadians that need serious help, and I am the first person to say, if you can help somebody and you're in a position to do so, then absolutely you should do so. But you have to be strong and healthy and come from a place of strength before you can realistically help anybody else.
Right.
And I know it's happening in the States too. You guys are shoveling money out the door also, and you've got a lot of the same similar problems. So it just seems like it's become a leadership position, just to get access to the money and get it to wherever they want to go. But it's not staying here. I can tell you that. It's not helping us.
Yeah, we're somewhere around $36 trillion in debt, and that's not even our real debt. Yeah, what I've come to conclude is that we have a certain segment of politicians, those on the left, that are 100% committed to an ideology, and they put the loyalty of that ideology above country, above everything else. And I think what they're doing is intentional. I mean, there's no other way to get around it. I mean, they want these countries like Canada, they want the West to fail.
Yes.
And there's no other conclusion that you can come to just looking at this with any sort of common sense. And I think this is, a globalist agenda where the West is currently the most powerful. We need to bring those down so they can push communism, socialism. The fact is if we get rid of wealth and we get rid of excess of any type, which they're doing really well, then you have to limit, you have to control all the resources. You have to control production. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to bankrupt us to the point to where they have complete control. It's like, hey, look, it's, these people over here are starving now. We have to take from you to give to them. Like, we have to control the means of production. We have to control the entire economy. We have to control and distribute all of these resources, whether we're talking about food, wealth, whether we're talking about healthcare. Like, it is so obvious to anyone that's paying attention. And I just don't understand how people can look at all of this and see something else. It's mind-boggling to me, because we are not, Canada and the United States, we're not in a better place than we were 10 years ago. I don't care if we're talking about healthcare, I don't care if we're talking about an economy, and you can go back even further. Speaking of healthcare, I've heard lots of different things when it came to the Canadian healthcare. I am interested in talking to you guys a little bit about, is it good? You obviously have a pretty socialist healthcare system over there. Talk to us a little bit about that. Good, bad, or indifferent. I don't care. What's your thoughts on that?
We had a 49-year-old man, I believe he was 49 years old, died in a
Yep.
waiting room in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, waiting to see a doctor. He was there for, I believe, most of the evening. Most of the time, my wife has been going through an illness now for the last 8 years. Our systems, it's overrun. It's underfunded. Our healthcare professionals are overworked. We lack doctors. The government keeps, of course, Canadians pay over 50% of their daily wage to the government in some form or fashion via tax, income tax. We do not get that back in return, especially when it comes to this, false free healthcare system we have in Canada. A lot of, I've seen a study today where there's a vast majority of Canadians that are actually fleeing to the US right now for medical assistance. They can get looked at a lot faster.
Yeah, it's
And one of the things that they're reverting to, if they can't help you in Canada, is they're offering to help you unalive yourself.
Yes.
And this is a very serious problem. And I don't know if that's a thing in the United States, but we just had a doctor. He was 26 years old, and he had diabetes, and he was depressed, and he was going blind. And so rather than help this kid, he's the same age as my daughter, one of my kids, they mated him. 26 years old. Kayla Pollock is in a wheelchair, vaccine injured. She woke up a quadriplegic after her vaccine. The first thing they did was just offer her maid. Our veterans in Canada that they can't get a Acorn stair lift in their house, but they'll get the maid paperwork. It's disgusting to me what is happening here. I mean, I think that is a choice, and the slippery slope is now they're talking about lowering the age, and they're just making reasons. Like first of all, it was if you've got a terminal illness, okay, I can understand that from a certain perspective, but as a Christian, I don't believe in it. But I mean, I'm all about freedom of choice. But when you start pressuring vulnerable people, homeless, the elderly, the sick, into helping them take their own lives instead of offering them care, it really upsets me. And the wait times in Canada, these people are waiting a long time and they're dying in the hospital. So whatever they're telling you in the United States, we do not have a free healthcare system up here, and it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, going back to the assisted suicide stuff, like, again, I see an agenda behind that. Like, there's an intent there to devalue life. And when you do that, it paves the way for much more aggressive policies, if you will. And again, I don't think this is by chance. And I think it's completely intentional. And these people are thinking 20, 30 years down the road from us. I hope that we both still have a country in 10 years. I don't know what's going on with this. I think, here in the United States, if we continue on the same course, I see us getting into a civil war. I don't see any other way around it. I hope that's not true. And I don't wish that. The last thing I would ever want is have to fight my neighbors and my fellow countrymen for this country. But with that being said, you can only continue to push so much. And just like we talked about, the tactics that left side of the aisle is constantly using for demonization, just trying to destroy people if they don't agree with them. That's what we see. And I think Americans are definitely tired of it. I hope that Canadians are tired of it and see what's going on and see the trajectory that our countries are headed in. But I can tell you right now, I don't have any ambassador power, but I would definitely, if I need to sign some paperwork to recommend you guys come down here to be free Americans, I'll do that. Any influence I can have on that.
Have your people call my people.
Keep serving our students up here and trucking away. I'm able to cross the border still. I haven't had any issues with that. Mischief isn't a harsh crime with the
A
U.S.
crime of moral
Customs officers.
turpitude. It's
Yes,
not a
so
crime of moral turpitude.
nothing but support from border crossing agents when I cross the border into the U.S. And like I said, I've been trucking in the U.S. for the better part of 23 years. So I love trucking the interstates down there and getting the amenities that those long haul U.S. truckers get. So it's one of my favorite things to do. My son and I just went to Nebraska last week for a combine out of the Case plant down there, and we had an amazing trip trucking with him.
And
Yeah,
we've had
folks,
so much support from Americans. Like I get DMs from them all the time. I know Chris does. I mean, I've got mail, I've got letters, I've got gifts from people all over the United States, and I just would really like to say sincerely thank you so much for the support. I've always loved America. I was always so jealous of your patriotism and the respect that you had. I grew up that way, watching you guys with your flag waving and your patriotism, and I was always a little bit jealous. And so for me, the convoy was the first time that I felt that I understood how you guys felt. And so I know it's meant a lot to both Chris and myself, the support that we've had from so many Americans. So thank you.
To respect, really.
well, and even talking about that, I mean, we've gotten to a point where we've been conditioned to think that it's wrong to be patriotic, that it's wrong to love your country. We've been conditioned for the last 15, 20 years that, this country was founded on slavery, that this country was founded by these racist white people that were evil, and the foundations of this country are essentially evil. And everything that we do abroad is evil. And there's lots of things that the United States does in other countries that I disagree with. But at the end of the day, I'll just speak as an American. I feel that this is the last beacon of hope for the world. And if we let this fall, like, there's no going back, folks. It's only downhill from there. It's going to be a despotic wasteland, and where you don't have individual liberty and freedom. And like, Americans need to wake up, Canadians need to wake up, Europeans need to wake, everybody needs to wake up and see what's going on. I mean, my God, if you're in the UK and you're in England and you don't see what's happening with the social media censorship, people going to jail for social media posts, for your country being taken over by Islam, and you as a citizen have no ability to fight back. We hear all of these horror stories where people are being assaulted and just fight back, and they're the ones that go to jail. Yeah. So like, we're losing the war, folks. And we're in a culture war at a minimum. And I think it's more than that. And man, people just need to wake up. And I hope, there's some Americans out there listening to you guys right now and in the future that understand what's at stake, because 1 minute you're going to think everything's fine, and the next minute it's not. And, unfortunately, a lot of Americans and Canadians and everybody else in the world are being convinced to participate in their own destruction, and they don't even realize it's happening. It really is a shame, and it's scary to see, for sure.
And they're self-censoring. They're afraid to say anything because you immediately get called a racist and canceled, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of what we have to just stop being afraid, because there's nothing to be afraid of. And it's like I was referring to or talking about those lawyers earlier. Like, that's fine if you don't want to stand up and you want to leave it to the middle class people to do something about it. But it's not preventing it from happening to you. It's just holding it off, right? It's just delaying it a little bit, because it's going to come for you too.
You're exactly right. Like, you may even those on the left, and that's the thing that it's shocking that they don't see what's going on there. Even those on the left, especially if you're not like far extreme left, like, they're coming for you as well. Soon as they've beat all the conservatives, the next thing you know, you're not going to be allowed to be religious. You're not going to be allowed to have a voice. You're not going to be allowed to anything that you hold dear. Like, you're not going to have the ability to push back and to stand up for yourself. That's what they want. They want to be able to control you. And we can see everything that they're doing, from 15-minute cities here in the United States to making energy cost as much as it does. All of that stuff is engineered. They want you to be 100% dependent on the government, because the more that you depend on the government, the more they can control you. And that's just the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
the government's done in Canada is through the case law that they've determined in the last number of years is they basically made it impossible to protest your government. They've built 4 years of case law against Tamara and I, and that case law can be used against left or right going forward. If it's a conservative government next time and the left is planning on protesting them, that case law can still be used. So the government is they're moving the ball with every motion, banning the right to peaceful assembly, the peaceful protest, your free speech. It's coming down the path, and there's so many people that are asleep and can't see that. It's scary.
Yeah, it really is. What we'll do real quick is we will go through and hit some questions for you guys. Thornton, thank you. You just became a member. Thank you very much. Domsey, you gifted 10 Paramount memberships. Thank you. You're awesome. We love you. Bob Catlol. Want to laugh? Look up Yaroslav Hunka. Scandal: Canadian House of Commons unwittingly invited a World War II vet for the German SS, and he got 2 standing ovations. Tell us about this. Clearly, you guys know the backstory on this.
Take it away, Chris.
This is the extent of our Liberal Party of Canada. Actually, our House of Commons, to be honest with you, they actually brought a Nazi into our House of Commons. That's our house, and gave him salute, a standing ovation, not once but twice. Yes, this is the current government. This is what they are promoting in this country. Of course, when they realized what they'd just done, they were all embarrassed and quiet and shy. But yet another way of no accountability of our elected officials doing something absolutely horrendous.
Now, one of the NDP members of Parliament, I think it was, actually tried to have it removed from the transcripts. She wanted it completely erased from the House of Commons transcripts. Yeah, after calling us Nazis and fascists and terrorists, and that was a little embarrassing. Yeah.
Congratulations, Canada, a new low right there under the Liberal regime.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's funny how the Liberals always own themselves. I mean, it really is. One of the things I found out, 2 questions I have for you guys. Speaking of Castro. Is Justin Trudeau the son of Castro?
The similarities are quite striking, aren't they?
They are quite striking.
And Justin Trudeau's mother was quite
enamored with Cuba.
Well known, yes.
Yeah.
Men.
Men, basically men. Yeah.
If it's not true, I'm gonna spread the information that it is true. That's all I'm gonna say. I want it to be true so bad. It's not funny. Why not?
Yeah.
What I did find interesting is, and I didn't know this till today, my producer was telling me about this. He was educating me on Canadian politics. But I guess Justin Trudeau's half brother, he was on the other side of this entire thing the whole time. I thought that was interesting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, Kyle Kemper, yes.
Yeah.
He has been an absolutely, I called him my spirit animal once, I think, because, I really love how he loves his brother, which is really obvious, which I completely respect and admire, but he's not afraid to call him out, but in a respectful way. He did not agree with a lot of his brother's policies. And he's actually, I don't know, I really enjoy following him. I don't know if you've had anything, have you followed him at all, Chris? But
yeah, I do.
It's an interesting perspective coming from his own family, for sure.
Yeah. Just trying to support you, my man. Keep pushing. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Altoids. We appreciate you, buddy. Makes me sick to see all these illegals robbing us of lines along with the crooked politicians. Yeah. It's amazing how charitable and generous politicians are with other people's money. I mean, they should be crowned saints.
Yeah.
How can I contact you, Gary? I have a lot to educate to people on what's going on in Canada and US. I am working to apply for an E2 visa in 26 for USA. DL podcast at ParamountTactical.com. It's DL podcast at ParamountTactical.com. There it is right there. So anybody that needs to contact us, you can send us an email with that, and I will try to get back to you. We'll go to some of these lives. He's the spitting image. He really is. Look, I mean, all joking aside, I remember the first time I heard this, I don't know, it was a couple years ago. Matter of fact, it might have even been around the time of the trucking protest. And I remember that was going around the internet. And I was like, no, there's no way. And then I started researching it and saw that his mother actually spent a lot of time in Cuba. There's Justin Trudeau right there, sitting with Papa, pulling on his beard.
You know, it's amazing too, because Justin Trudeau is officially dating an astronaut too. So, you know, everything keeps looking up for this man. He is such a
Rocket
feminist.
scientist meets astronaut. That's me.
Again, the jokes write themselves.
They do, it's true.
Definitely like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure to say hi. And when we're done with this video, folks, after it posts as a full video, make sure you go like that. That's what really will help push this.
I'll share it on my platforms. I will definitely do that.
Thanks, Tamara and Chris, from a fellow Canadian. You both are heroes to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Donna.
For all you Canadians out there, man, you got to get out there and, I don't know, you got to do some resistance and turn your government around. And for you Americans, you got a lot of work to do as well. So keep pushing that. This is, I don't know anything about this. What about the ostriches that were slaughtered just recently? They were found to be conservative ostriches.
Yeah, they were conservative ostriches. They loved freedom and their charter rights and freedom.
Those got to go.
That can't happen. I was very fortunate enough to get out to the ostrich farm a couple times too. We performed at a benefit concert there in the summer, and then a week before we were sentenced, actually, my husband and I went back out to play, just to try and help them raise some money for their fight. But it really reminded me of Freedom Convoy, just on a smaller scale. I got to the farm. There was a little community that had come to set up and support, and people were donating food and, you know, that stuff. And but the alarming thing is that it was over a year ago, I believe, 2 of the ostriches died, and a sickness had went through the herd, and one of them died. They tested them, and they had avian flu. So for some unknown reason, they decided they were going to do this cull. However, they just did the cull at the end of October. So
now, who is they? Are we talking about the government or the ostrich farm?
It's the CFIA. It's a government-run agent. Well, I don't even know if it's government, but it's the Canadian Food Inspection Agency.
Gotcha.
Sorry, Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And so they decided that they were going to come in and cull this entire herd and kill off this family's entire livelihood. They came to the farm, completely took over the whole property, told them where they could and couldn't go on their property, actually forced these people, or said they were not able to care for their own livestock, and refused to test any of the birds. Now, these birds would have developed a herd immunity, and that's all they were saying. Like, test a bird. It costs like $20 in 15 minutes. To do a test on one of these ostriches.
But if they tested them themselves, Tamara, what was the penalty for testing the birds themselves? If the farm tested them themselves, 60 grand?
60 grand or $20,000 or 60,000, I can't remember. And I think 6 months in jail potentially. So it was absolutely terrible to see. I mean, imagine somebody coming into your home, Gary, and telling you, you can't go here and you can't go here. And by the way, you're not allowed to look after your pets anymore. You know, the CFIA does not know how to care for ostriches. That is obviously a specialty because we're in Canada. Right. Ostriches are not native here.
And what they ended up doing in the end, they built kill pens with straw bales, and they stacked them in square rectangle areas. And what they did was about 40 marksmen stood on top of these bales with 22 caliber rifles and the odd 223, judging by the casings found on the ground. And they euthanized these animals by shooting them at a distance. A lot of the animals survived through the night, and they had to be euthanized, you know, with a shot to the head, I guess, the next day. But
how do you shoot an ostrich? First of all,
death squad.
Anyone that's ever been around a chicken knows how flighty and full of anxiety they are. You know what I mean? Like it was inhumane. It was inhumane.
Reminiscent of the 1930s death squad.
They left a big mess there. Yeah, it was. Like, it was absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, especially after the first shot. I mean, they're going to be going all over the place. That's
And the family had to sit outside and listen to it. And not only that, they did it after dark.
I
We
mean,
waited until dark.
between this and, you know, what you guys had to go through, the way that they're pushing, um, government ran suicide, like, it's hard to believe that we're even talking about a first world country. I mean, this sounds like something you'd only hear in a third world country ran by some dictator, and yet here we are. I mean, you know, for all intents and purposes, you guys are Americans right here on the North America. You're right above us, and it's just insane to hear.
It's pretty scary on it.
It
It's
really
very
is.
unsettling what's happening. It's not the country that I grew up in, that's for sure.
But the scary part
And
about that is, so the Canadians tune into their local legacy media every night to get their local dose of indoctrination, and hook, line, and sinker believe it. Most of them, you know, I was raised at the kitchen table. We watched the 6 o'clock news every evening as a family, and we believed what the TV was saying. But over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, that media has been turned now to indoctrinate people. Like you said, the Canadian election, when Tamara said that earlier, the Canadian election was won by the Liberals purely on hate speech by demonizing President Trump.
yeah,
Meanwhile, we have our own issues up there right now that they refuse to look at.
This is a
but
good
that's why they
question.
do it, because it's a distraction. That's why. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. This is a great question. And look, I'll just, you know, I think Canada, Australia, and there's England. I mean, all of these are perfect case studies as to why, number one, our founders came up with the Second Amendment, and number
Yes.
two, why we need to make sure that we hold on to the Second Amendment. There is a reason that authorities are less likely to push back, especially on rural communities in the United States, because they know, like, look, having guns as citizens has a certain je ne sais quoi, if you will, of some resistance to the government and the ability to resist the government. Like, that is a calculus that they have, and when that is gone, this is what you get. You get Canada, you get the UK, you get you know, Australia. Like, folks, you don't understand how important the Second Amendment actually is, and I've, you know, a government that is armed over its citizenry is not a government of, for, and by the people. It is a government set up to dominate the people, and you
Yeah.
cannot be equal with the government if they can outgun you, and they have guns and you don't. That's just not how it works. The lack of respect that the government has for its people is completely gone, and because all things are enforced by the barrel of a gun. I don't care if we're talking about speeding laws. I don't care if we're talking about mischief laws. I don't care what you're talking about. Every single one of these things are enforced by the government, by a barrel of a gun, and the respect for its citizens goes the exact opposite way. We're also, that is enforced by the barrel of a gun and the ability to fight back. That, you know, obviously has been taken from you guys. What was? Go ahead.
We had trained snipers on the rooftop of Parliament buildings with weapons fixated on children and peaceful Canadian protesters. I want to remind people that actually happened in February of 2022. There was SWAT teams, there was deployments of that. There was a lot of children in the crowd. It was a family event. And that's as far as our government would go, to have SWAT teams and sniper rifles on the Canadian people, especially children, on our nation's capital during con. They will go as far as it takes to push their agenda.
Yeah. No.
I mean, at what point do you have to ask yourself, and same with what you were just talking about, Gary, is like, at what point did regular people become the enemy?
Yeah.
Because that's how I feel that people that care about their country, or that care about democracy. Canada is not a democracy. We are not a democracy. Our finance minister and deputy prime minister froze the bank accounts of 208 Canadians without parliamentary oversight and no court order from a judge, because they donated $10, $50 to a cause that they believed in, and their bank accounts were frozen. They were going to take insurance, business insurance, vehicle insurance away. It's ridiculous. We have the illusion of a democracy, and we like to talk about how democratic we are, but we are not. This is how an authoritarian, totalitarian government operates. They
Yeah.
shut
No,
you up. They bankrupt you. Like you just said, they put a gun to your face, and or whatever. Like it's not good.
yeah. No, we even here in the United States, we almost have complete authoritarian control by our government under the guise of freedom. Like even during COVID, one of the things that they were doing, people that wouldn't enforce mask mandates, wouldn't close their shops, they were threatening to take their business license. Like, first of all, you shouldn't need a business license to operate a business in the United States. Last time I checked, we were free individuals. And if we want to open up a business, we should be able to open up a business. We don't need to ask the government for permission. I mean, you can't even get married. I mean, think about how crazy that is. You need permission from the government. You need a piece of paper that says, yes, you know what, you can get married. It's absolute, like we have gone so far over our skis on all this, and we are so like, I don't know what the answer is.
What will it take?
Yeah,
what will it take to wake people up? I thought the ostriches would have been one of the last straws in Canada for people, and the government demonizes them too. And we even found people within the freedom movement who become divisive and went out and did a lot of research to try and discredit the people of the ostrich farm. This is a family. They lost their livelihood now with their animals. Now they're facing years and years of lawfare. They were both, family members were charged, obviously, with trespassing and mischief. Mischief seems to be the word that the government uses against its citizens when they can't come up with an actual real crime.
It's just an umbrella term that they can easily charge you with.
Yeah. Exactly.
And when it comes to gun control or any of these where they start eroding your rights, it's always done under the guise of safety and security. It's always convincing
or the children.
you or the children. They're always trying to convince you that you'll be safer if you just trust us. That has never turned out well, folks. Like, government is inherently evil, and it's a necessary evil, but it has to have some checks and balances. And without an armed populace, it has none. And we just need to understand that and understand how important and sacred the Second Amendment here is in the United States. You cannot keep the First Amendment or all the other Bill of Rights and everything else that we have as far as constitutional and civil liberties. Like, those don't exist without the Second Amendment and the fear of government pushing too hard on its people. It just, like, you're courting disaster the moment that you're willing to comply with some of that stuff. And it's always incrementalism, right? First, it's, all you need to do is just give up your 30-round magazines. All you need to do is give up, your assault rifles, any sort of semi-automatic rifle. All you need to, now that's not good enough. You need to give up bolt action rifles, because what we're being punished with is anytime these things happen, it's criminals out there that are doing criminal things, and then we, the law-abiding people, somehow punishing us is the way to prevent this from happening. That's not how it works, and it's a ridiculous argument to begin with. And again, like, it's hard to believe we fall for this silly stuff.
It seems to be every time there's a world, mass shooting, whether it be in the U.S. or Britain or even Australia, our government rhetoric comes up around gun control, trying to keep Canadian citizens safe. When it didn't even happen in Canada, like a mass shooting in the U.S. will then spark our Canadian politicians to act out and restrict us more. It's they're using any excuse they can right now to come down harder on us, and that power and control.
Yeah,
they will not allow a crisis to go to waste. If they can use it, they can leverage it, and the people are dumb enough to buy it, they'll sell it. I mean, that's how this works. So with these ostriches, I'm just reading through some of the comments. I guess it was 300 ostriches.
Yeah, just about 400. Yep.
400. Wow.
Yeah, just under 400.
And this is these people's livelihood, right?
It was 200. They were over 200 days, 250 days, virus free or symptom free, I guess.
Yeah.
They did their protocol. They put them in quarantine. They did everything they could. I mean, basically, they assumed that a wild bird flew into the flock and transmitted this avian flu. These birds were completely healthy, and the government, because the family said no, the government in Canada, the CFI, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, had to make sure they pushed back and used their authority until, to the last shell casing, I guess.
Crazy. And it's just like here in the United States. I don't know how, we have the FDA here, and then USDA. it's nuts to me here in the United States. Number one, and most West Virginia just changed this. You couldn't sell raw milk to anybody. That was illegal. And then if you raise cattle, you can't butcher and sell like the meat. Like again, like where's our freedom at? And you know, there's it's not like anyone hasn't gotten sick from packaged meat from these big huge companies. That happens all the time. And then on top of that, people, even liberals, they're like, yeah, that's good. But at the same time, they want to complain about corporate this and corporations this and how evil corporations, whereas you won't let these farmers down there sell the good, clean, organic meat that they're raising, but yet you want this government control over our food. Like, I don't know.
Scare tactics. I'm
CFA
born and
just
raised.
came out against the cattle farmers and did the same thing. And I don't know if you saw that, Chris, but in the headline or the announcement just came out a few days ago that I don't know all the details, but they're going after the cattle farmers because they want to add some type of tracing, very intense tracing for where these cattle are going, as you said, once they're butchered and stuff, or who they're getting sold to. Like just a bunch of red tape. And they actually came out and said that they'd consulted farmers and they were going to try and push this forward. I don't know if you can find it or not, but and it turns out that they haven't talked to a single farmer.
They don't have to, not in this country.
They don't have to. No, they don't.
No. Why would they?
Yeah, that's
that
right.
would be abdicating some of their control to farmers, and they can't have that. Folks, here's what I want to do. Again, I want to open up the floor if you have questions for, I keep wanting to call you Tamara and or Chris. I was about 15, 20 minutes behind on the chat, but I'm going to throw that up there now. And of course, we will prioritize super chats. But if you got any questions for them or comments, go ahead and throw them out now. I am down at the very bottom, so I will see them as they come up. But I really appreciate you guys coming on and just sharing your story. Like I said, I think it's really important. It's one thing to sit back and say, oh, well, you know, they were prosecuting and persecuting some of these protesters that, by the way, were painted out to be, you know, white supremacists, racist, terrorists. It's another thing altogether when you come on here and you put a face to it and realize these are real people behind this that are being, you know, destroyed by their own government that is supposed to be there to help and protect them. And yet, because they don't agree and they push back in any way on some of these arbitrary and capricious policies, you know, I think it's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that, thank you for having us on.
Yeah. Canada should definitely become our 51st state. I'm all about it.
I love the U.S. I've loved the U.S. I remember when I turned 21, you need to be 21 years old to operate a commercial vehicle in the U.S., of course. So I 18 in Canada. I trucked in Canada for 3 years until I was able to reach my 21st birthday, and I was gone. I trucked to Texas. I did pipe hauls off the docks in Baytown. I spent the majority of my career trucking all over North America, and I love the U.S. a lot. So
that's awesome. Well, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, if anyone asks, is it okay with Gary if you guys come down here? You're always welcome. And all joking aside, if you guys are ever over here in the Northern Virginia, we're over here near West Virginia. You're talking about Baytown. Like I said, I grew up in Beaumont, right down 81, I-10. But yeah, we're right here off 81. So if you're ever out this way, we'd love to have you. And we got a bed for you. You can come out. I'd love to have you in person and do a podcast there. That'd be great.
That'd be fantastic.
What is there anything else? Like, I guess, you know, final comments. Chris, what would you like people to know?
Well, don't follow my X account too closely there. I tend to spend a lot of time on X fighting with the left on there. I find it an avenue of therapy per se, I guess. I do a lot of my more professional posting on Facebook. Chris Barber, Big Red Official is my main Facebook page. You know, we're just Canadians. We're blue collar, hardworking, farm, born and raised. We've had enough of the government overreach in this country, and we decided to stand. And because of that, the government came down on us as hard as they possibly could. We're both convicted criminals right now, but we don't feel the remorse that the government wants us to feel. We have so many people. I speak to Canadians every day, just driving Big Red down the highway, and I hear the stories of the desperation and the darkness that people through COVID times. We made a difference, and we saved a lot of lives, and we were basically the spark that united the flame around the world that woke people up from this COVID frenzy that was going on for a number of years. So we're continuing to stand. Tamara and I have been, standing together since January of 2022, and we continue to stand proud together. And that's basically our story, and we'll keep telling it the way it actually happened, and we'll keep disproving that government narrative.
Well, and something you touched on a little bit too is like that was just the first of many more to come, folks. Anytime that there's an opportunity to take your freedoms, get more government control, they're going to do it. And I'm still looking back. And I know it was like, look, COVID was a shock to us all. We didn't really know what was going on, and our government and many other, we'll just say, actors within that took advantage of that. We don't have that excuse going forward. Like, we can't allow this to ever happen again. And I hope in the future, like, we're smart enough to push back a lot harder, a lot faster, a lot sooner, and make sure that the government has a clear message that we, the people, are not going to stand for this.
Mm-hmm.
Tamara?
Well, my best advice to you would be, don't be a Canada. Nobody is going to fight for your freedom. You have to fight for it yourself. And, like I said, keep the conversations going and just, pay attention. I think one of the biggest problems is that so many people are in denial, or they don't want to recognize what's happening, because I strongly believe once you acknowledge that there's a problem, then it becomes your responsibility to do something about it. And protecting our freedom, and here in Canada, protecting our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, is our responsibility, because the government's not going to do it, as you just said. So be vigilant, pay attention, love your neighbor, and trust in God. He's got your back.
Somebody else was talking about the healthcare there. There's a rule of thumb that I live by. If you want the least effective, most expensive option, go with the government option. Allow them to take something over. Like, it's never, how many times do we have to have, I don't care what you want to call it. I don't care if you want to talk about Social Security. I don't care if you talk about welfare, healthcare. Every time the government gets involved, it never gets better. It's always worse. And I don't know why people would expect anything different, but they were tricked into, it's going to be more affordable. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. And that's about the time that my healthcare went from $350 a month for my entire family to $1,400 a month. And yeah, thanks, Obama. We appreciate you.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, man, I just appreciate you guys coming on so much and sharing your story. I'd love to have you guys on again in the future. I'll definitely be watching you both on X and sharing everything that you guys post. If there's anything I can ever do to help you guys, you let me know. If you need to get on and give a message out, whatever I can do, you let me know, and you guys stay in touch.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. And yes, there's so much to talk about. We didn't even talk about the Emergencies Act, but yes, thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure and a joy to meet you.
Yeah, no, you as well. And we'll get you back on. Whatever else you guys want to talk about, you guys let me know, and we'll get you on and talk about it, because Americans need to see what's happening. Because like I said, it is, Canada's a bellwether for where the direction that America is headed. It's kind of like Europe, then Canada, then the U.S. Like, we follow that every single time, and the trajectory that we're on is not good, and we got to wake up and start doing something to change what's happening here. Listen, folks, we really appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate all the love and support. Make sure you guys go follow them. I know J-Dub actually put up their X accounts. Make sure you go follow them. I do have Chris's down in the description below. I will fix that and put Tamara's up there as well. So go give them a follow, support them. And we appreciate you all supporting us. And until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.